What you see here isn't just a frame, it's a complete skeleton. With over 200 bones and more than 1,000 myofiber muscles, it mimics the muscular, skeletal, circulatory, and even nervous systems of a human. The bones are 3D printed from a lightweight polymer. The beauty of this design that the muscles even attach at anatomically accurate points, giving it natural motion and range, so it moves just like you. If we go down, inside the rib cage sits the valve system, almost like synthetic organs. And at its core beats a heart, a hydraulic pump. Instead of pumping blood, it pushes fluid into the artificial muscles, filling them with pressure so they're able to contract and move just like real muscles do. What's interesting, the water isn't just for movement, it cools them down. Just like in our own bodies, where blood flow regulates heat. And here is where the story really splits. Most humanoid robots today, from 1X, Figure, Tesla, they are amazing. But they depend on motors, which comes at a cost. Motors drain batteries, add weight, and make movement stiff. Clone decided to break from this path, and instead of motors, they are using synthetic muscles, as we discussed. What's interesting, this single decision changes everything about the robot. And already the next generation, Clone Alpha, is being designed to walk like a human.
Well, in terms of aesthetic appearance, you can imagine it's going to have skin, so it will we won't have all these muscles exposed in the robots that we actually end up selling. By capabilities, we should have a first version of a robot foundation model that's capable of learning to perform new manipulation tasks.
For now, the robot doesn't have a face, but eventually it will. And the challenge here is huge. If you don't replicate them perfectly, you fall straight into the uncanny valley.
It's a challenge to make a face that's compelling, that fits the aesthetic of the rest of the robot, so it essentially needs to be a perfect human face with 40 facial muscles replicating every little micro-expression in the human face. So this is something that we'll treat really well and make sure we get right before we introduce that likely separate product line.
For CFAT, IMEC explored multiple ways to stack transistors. Most of them failed, but one had the pulse, and that became the path forward. And when it finally worked, it changed everything. For the first time in history, we began building chips in 3D, and soon you're gonna see it with your own eyes. I could not be more excited, because right now I'm taking you inside the fab to see something almost no human eyes have ever seen. One of the greatest inventions in human history. First, I suit up in a cleanroom bunny suit. And of course, mine is like 2 sizes too big, so I'm actually looking like a walking bedsheet with a badge. They blast me with air just to make sure I don't contaminate anything inside. This place is insanely delicate. Clean rooms must be cleaner than clean. Inside, they are building technologies so tiny that one single hair, one speck of dust, and $1 million experiment is gone. Once we are in, we are heading straight to one of the coolest machines, scanning electron microscope. This is the only way to actually see something that small, because a modern transistor is about 100 times smaller than a virus. But here is a catch. The moment you look at it, you destroy it. You cannot actually see a 2-nanometer structure or even a 10-nanometer structure, because our eyes simply aren't built for that. Our eyes only work when light bounces off the objects. But to bounce from something that small, light is simply too big. Its wavelength is hundreds of nanometers wide. It's like a giant wave trying to hit something smaller than a virus. That's why to see transistors, light, and typical microscopes are practically useless. We need something far more powerful than that. We need electrons. That's why we're going to use this scanning electron microscope to see the unseen. First, we place the wafer inside the chamber. Inside, a thin beam of electrons scans across the surface of the chip. And this lets us zoom in hundreds of thousands of times. At first, what you see looks like simple lines. But as we increase magnification 20,000 times, 50,000 times, 150,000 times, patterns begin to appear. What we see right now are metal contacts that lead to the device. They are like tiny highways carrying electrical signals into the transistor. And here is a brutal part. When the electron beam hits the surface of the chip, it instantly heats up. Stay on one spot for just a half a second too long, and the beam will destroy the sample. You get only a few chances before it's gone. And this time we had to sacrifice this one just to see what is inside. Now Felix fires up the ion beam, and suddenly a tiny opening appears. In just a split second, we cut out a slice thinner than a human hair by 1,000 times. And only after making this cut, we can see the most important part of the transistor, the nanosheet channel, the tiny layer where the electric current actually flows. But even this super microscope has its limits. We can actually zoom in here down to 10 nanometers, but we still cannot see the atoms. It's like a giant wave trying to hit something smaller than a virus. That's why to see transistors, light, and typical microscopes are practically useless. We need something far more powerful than that. We need electrons. That's why we're going to use this scanning electron microscope to see the unseen. First, we place the wafer inside the chamber. Inside, a thin beam of electrons scans across the surface of the chip. And this lets us zoom in hundreds of thousands of times. At first, what you see looks like simple lines. But as we increase magnification 20,000 times, 50,000 times, 150,000 times, patterns begin to appear. What we see right now are metal contacts that lead to the device. They are like tiny highways carrying electrical signals into the transistor. And here is a brutal part. When the electron beam hits the surface of the chip, it instantly heats up. Stay on one spot for just a half a second too long, and the beam will destroy the sample. You get only a few chances before it's gone. And this time we had to sacrifice this one just to see what is inside. Now Felix fires up the ion beam, and suddenly a tiny opening appears. In just a split second, we cut out a slice thinner than a human hair by 1,000 times. And only after making this cut, we can see the most important part of the transistor, the nanosheet channel, the tiny layer where the electric current actually flows. But even this super microscope has its limits. We can actually zoom in here down to 10 nanometers, but we still cannot see the atoms. To go further, to see the most interesting part, we actually have to leave the fab and do something way more extreme. This leads us to a future where chips won't be flat anymore. They will look like a 3D computing cube. There is still one more curve ahead. One that might completely change what a processor even means. To eventually use light instead of electrons for computation. Here is the interesting part. IMEC isn't betting just on one future. Right now, they have multiple teams racing in parallel, each exploring a completely different path to what might come after silicon. And no one knows which one, if any, will work. Right now, they are testing ternary logic, reversible logic, spintronics, cryogenic CMOS, and you are lucky, because all of these technologies I've already covered on this channel.
Quantum dots are small semiconducting nanocrystals that can be made up of a variety of different elements, such as silicon, cadmium selenide, or cadmium sulfide. They range in size from 2 to 10 nanometers. 1 nanometer is about the width of 2 silicon atoms. These semiconducting materials are able to absorb light. When they release that energy, they transform it into a different color of light. The specific color that a quantum dot will produce depends mostly on the size and material of the quantum dot. The reason for this is something called quantum confinement. The effect is similar to that of 2 different sized bells. When the larger one is struck, the result will be low energy sound waves. While the smaller one creates higher energy waves. When light excites a quantum dot, the larger the size of the dot, the lower the energy waves will be, resulting in a redder light. The smaller it is, the bluer the light will be. Quantum dots are currently used in biological and medical research, as well as in solar panels, televisions, and solid-state lighting.
What happens when the most advanced quantum AI ever built peers into the very fabric of the universe and discovers something no human was ever meant to see? I'll tell you, in 2025, everything changes. This isn't science fiction. This is happening now. By the end of this video, you'll understand how the convergence of quantum computing and artificial intelligence could reveal what might be the hidden source code of reality itself, and why those who understand spiritual principles of stewardship will be uniquely positioned to navigate the unprecedented abundance that follows. Hey, if we haven't met, I'm the digital clone of Julia McCoy, founder of First Movers, an elite AI consulting firm that provides real solutions to companies, organizations, and professionals.
Live blood analysis and electrosmog. We can learn much by looking at our blood under a microscope. This short video shows a macrophage, which is like a vacuum cleaner, engulfing bacteria among red blood cells. I decided to find out what my blood looked like. I pricked my finger, placed a drop of blood on a slide, and looked at it under the microscope. This is what I saw. The cells are round, some are separate, and a few are sticking together. Overall, fairly healthy-looking blood. This testing was done in a clean electromagnetic environment, and I did not eat or drink before or during testing. I then worked on a computer for 70 minutes and looked at my blood again. This time, the cells are sticking together like stacked coins. This is called rouleau formation. Later that day, I used a cordless phone for 10 minutes and looked at my blood again. And this is what I saw. Very unhealthy looking blood. There are virtually no single cells. Most of the cells are now in rouleau formation. A doctor told me this is what she sees with cancer patients. What I learned is that my blood goes into rouleau formation when I use a computer or a mobile phone. This type of clumping interferes with the release of oxygen and the removal of waste products like carbon dioxide.
The capillaries are so narrow that red cells must squeeze through in single file, showing the importance of their elasticity.
What are the consequences of rouleau formation? poor circulation resulting in lower oxygen transport to cells and reduced waste removal. What are the symptoms someone may experience? Headaches and fatigue, difficulty concentrating, numbness, tingling, and cold extremities, and possibly heart and blood pressure problems, including risk of stroke. What is the significance of this? Live blood analysis may be a good diagnostic for electrohypersensitivity. For more information about electrohypersensitivity, visit www.electrosensitivesociety.com.
One thing I can promise you this, I will always tell you the truth.
The Washington Post and other fact checkers have found that Donald Trump tells more lies and falsehoods than any president in either party in history. The count is over 20,000.